We are here on another episode of Address It, and I have Crystal Flint with me. What hat you want to start with first? We could do the referee hat. You want to start with the referee hat?
Let's go.
Um, Tell us about how long you been reffing.
So officially, I've been officiating, should say, 17 years. 17 years, kind of in a little hiatus, or shall I say, maybe coming out of a hiatus, because once I started coaching high school, I kind of took a step back from it because it was a little bit much with both of my boys playing high school basketball. So,
Should refs or should officials have to should they have to see the media after the game? It was
um,
a thing, I forget who said it, but they proposed like the officials should have to talk to the media after the game to say what the players do. What do you think
I
about that?
I don't know if I agree with it, only because at that point there's nothing you can do about it. So addressing the media, it probably would not serve anything positive, because I would imagine that you want them to address the media when they made a mistake. You already, as an official, have assigners and evaluators that are talking to you and saying, hey, what did you see here? And so you're explaining that to them. In terms of the general public, what would it change? That's just my perspective of it. So I don't know of any huge benefit that would come from it. So I don't know about that one.
What's the hardest call to make as a ref?
I think the hardest call is a block charge,
Block charge.
only because it's a bang bang play, and if you're not looking for the correct thing, then you can kick that call, and it's more than your eyes on it. So it's something that officials need to discuss. Who's going to take a call when there's an intersection, and that's usually in an intersection where you want to see, well, who got there first. And so they teach you, I'm not quite sure now because I haven't done it in a couple of years, but they teach officials to officiate the defense, not the offense. You officiate the offense, but you need to see if the defense got there first and if they established legal guarding position. So it's a difficult one. I think sometimes just yeah. I'll stick with that one. I'll stick with that one.
Can you tell me about a time where you was fed up with somebody? They what give me a moment, a brief story.
That
When,
happens all the time with officials, But I think I'll put it like this: my greatest frustration as an official, and being a coach has helped me with this, is when a coach doesn't move on. When they don't move on. So I've had several times where a coach is you make a call, and again, like I said, what you gonna do after? Officials probably hardly ever change the call. So if I made a call and you made your point, we're gonna move on. We're done with it. But the coach that just keeps on insisting that you go back to something that was called 3-4 plays ago, like that's I would say that's the most frustrating thing as an official.
what about the players though? Do how much leeway do you give a player to talk to you during the game?
I tend to listen because I played basketball, so I understand when a player is coming in there and they're sincerely asking something. But if you're trying to show up an official, that's never gonna work. But if you're sincere about a call, and again, it can't be every call. It can't be every call. So even if a coach hardly ever says anything, and then they stand up, then you really, really need to take a look at what was called. So I just think that persistent, people say crybaby, like
But do certain players get certain privileges?
I think so. I think so. I think all officials would like to think that I don't do that, but it's natural to want your best players in the game. So I'm not going to give a player that is really good a ticky tack fifth foul, for instance. You know, so you do kind of think of it, unless it was a foul. You know, unless it was a foul. So you want to call the game late, just like you would call it early. But a real ticky tack foul, you want their fifth foul to be a good foul, because you want a good game as well.
Do, pe-
Officials want good games.
do people give you a harder time, you think, because you're a woman?
Absolutely.
Because
Not
you
only
ref
a woman,
men.
but a black woman is.
Because you ref men, right?
I ref boys. I ref the boys. And I think I want to say at the time I probably was the only black woman official in the state that was at the state tournament level.
How do you get
Very
there?
very few of us were actually varsity level officials. A lot of the women that I knew either got out of it, black women I should say, they got out of it, or they moved on to another state where they felt that where their game could grow. Meaning that they wanted to officiate at the collegiate level, because we only have Minnesota here. So to officiate college basketball, NCAA basketball, Division I basketball, a lot of women went out east and got put right on. I mean, it's here, but you gotta travel a lot. So if you want to be in the state, all we have is all we had at that time was the University of Minnesota, and then everything else was D2, D3.
The WNBA. Are they underpaid?
I think women in general, you can pick an occupation, are underpaid, and I would go as far to say undervalued. So I don't know the exact salaries of women in the WNBA in terms of officials, but I think I could say with some accuracy that it's not where the men are.
I mean, but should it be though?
Absolutely, you're doing the same thing. You're doing the same thing. I think now, is it consistent dunking? No, that's probably the only difference. That's probably the only difference. I think the women are moving at a high level. So you're running, you're not walking up the court. You're running up the court. You're still getting grief from coaches. You're still getting grief from players. You're still getting grief from fans. You still got to know the rule book. You still got to travel. So all those things are very similar. So why not?
I mean, but I mean, do you think? What do you think it's based on though? Like,
I think it should be comparable, because obviously the WNBA is just what 3-4 months, and the NBA is a lot longer. So obviously they're going to make more money, but in terms of like your baseline, I think it should be comparable. Should it be the exact same thing? Absolutely not, because the revenue isn't the same. But it should be comparable.
okay. And that's what I always ask. Like, and I don't know the numbers, but what is the revenue bringing in? You know, if the revenue isn't the same, I have a hard time thinking that the players it should be the same.
I think what the women in the WNBA want in terms of that, and I'm not speaking about officials, but I think what they want is they want the same opportunities. They want the same opportunities. So if you're giving the men these sponsorships, these opportunities for advertisement, the way they travel, the women should get the same thing. they're doing the same thing. You know, they play back-to-back games. They don't play the same amount of games, but they have a strenuous schedule as well. So why not afford them the same opportunities?
But I mean, what if their pushback is because they don't make the money? As far as, you know, if such and such faces, if Kyrie Irving faces on this as opposed to, I don't know, somebody else.
Yeah, well, I
the
mean,
sales wouldn't, you know.
well, you think of someone like Asia Wilson,
Okay.
she should be the face of the WNBA, right? She's won a championship as well. You know what I mean? Like, how much do we see her on television? How many commercials have you seen her in? You know what I mean? Market her just like you would market the number one male athlete. You know what I mean? Yeah, she has a couple of Nike commercials and stuff like that, but you don't see her in a lot of advertisement where women can be promoted. And I'm not just saying her, because there's other women that are doing great things, and we're in a different market, so I can't tell you what they're doing, you know, in Vegas. I don't know what their promotions are for her there, but it should be comparable. And think about even merchandising. You know, if you go to a Target, for instance, how much WNBA things do you see? And the Lynx have won championships, multiple championships.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they're bringing in something. So I just think it should be treated similarly. Just like, you know, you look at the NCAA tournament, right? And the men, they got all this stuff, and then the women, they got a little closet over there. You know, it's like, come on, they're doing the same things. They're selling out arenas as well. You know, the tickets aren't as much, obviously. So, I mean, you do have to think about those things, but we're just talking about the bare minimum of what can be done is not being done.
So you played
did.
though, right?
I did.
And what's the highest level you played?
I played a semi-pro, I'd say college basketball. I played the University of Minnesota, but then we flirted a little bit with the semi-pro team here. We had the Minnesota Stars, and we got like $50. This is before the WNBA, so this was like 1995. WNBA came a couple of years after that. So, you know, we played a short schedule against Oklahoma teams in Chicago. Our home site was MCTC at the time. We had our opening game at the University of Minnesota. So it was just flirted a little bit with the semi-pro team. And then obviously the WNBA came along. I tried out for it because I didn't want any regrets, but I blew my knee out for a third time trying to prepare for that semi-pro team. So I had an opportunity to go and play in Sweden, but I was at that time in my collegiate level, I was burnt out, and I was like, I'm not going to go to another country and establish myself all over again, because I came from Boston to Minnesota. I knew nobody.
You would have won if it was more money, though, right?
Well, I mean, there was money. There was
I said
money.
more money, though.
Well, that wasn't even in my thought process. At that time, I was just like, you know, I served the purpose that I came to do, which was to get my degree from the University of Minnesota, play 4 years of college basketball, and my goal was to go and get a job. You know, that was pretty much what most women were doing. Yeah, we had some women that were already established overseas, like, you know, Teresa Witherspoon, people like that were over there. But that was my goal at that time. Now, girls aim much higher, and there's a lot more opportunities because the game has grown, so rightfully so.
Is that what you transitioned into coaching? From
I
there?
did. So my coach LaRue Fields was the head coach that recruited me to the University of Minnesota. She resigned my freshman year. Black woman, strong black woman. I felt like I could come to the U and make a make a difference. But she resigned my freshman year. So the new coach that came in, which was Linda Hill McDonald, I played 4 years for her. She was the one that, because when as student athletes, you got to go in the community, you do community service. So we did camps for kids, and she was like, I think you make a good coach. So she afforded me the opportunity to join her staff. I had to have graduated, and I also had to have my teammates that I played with had to have graduated. So that's how I had no aspirations to be a coach at all.
Do you feel like coaches can take a player's joy? Like that happens often?
I think if a coach isn't transparent, that I think that the player can internalize things differently, So I think in terms of taking your joy, I think it could be taken or misinterpreted and therefore internalized differently. But, communication is a two-way street. So I tell my players, because I hear all the time, I hear parents say it, I hear athletes say it. I think myself personally, I think I'm too strong-willed for that to happen. But I can see where if there's perceived favoritism, if a player doesn't know their role and it's not communicated, and if you're just taking them out or not playing them and you're not telling them why, then I could see that happening.
How much should a parent talk to a player on the court?
A parent?
Yeah, like game day.
I think the only thing a parent should do from the court, and I speak to myself first because I've done this, is to encourage the player. That's it. That's it. Unless you're on the bench, unless you're in those practices, if you're watching film, unless you're scouting, how are you going to yell out to a player and you don't know what the coach's game plan is? All you know is what your child is doing or what you've seen them do. You don't know what the other four players like. I just find it interesting that when parents can have the opportunity, if allowed, to go and help and volunteer and put that time in, that they don't do it, but they have all the answers in the stands, So I think, you could tell your kid, hustle, work hard, and these are things that I've said. Fix your body language, but shoot, pat, You don't know what the coach just told them coming out of a timeout, and you're telling them to do something contrary, perhaps, to what the coach has just told them. Who they gonna listen to? And it depends on the age.
Yeah.
Right? And even if it's high school, I know some high schoolers whose parents put way too much pressure on their child, and it's not even the coach. The coach will get blamed for it. Because people aren't honest, but I've seen this happen numerous times. And it always falls back on the coach. When guess who was yelling from the stands?
Mom, dad.
Mom or dad. Or otherwise. Trainers, throw them in there too, It's like you have to get a clear understanding of what the game plan is. Because parents this is all they see, is their child. That's it, in most cases. Now, some parents, they're about the team. They're like, hey, good job to other people's children. But that's not the norm.
As a parent, what do you look for, let's say middle school, you're looking for a coach for your kid to play for. What are you looking for in a coach? I'm
looking for a coach that's not just winning, win at all costs. You want somebody that is fully invested in the total child, right? Because your child may not, in middle school, they may not have all the skill sets needed to be great, but if you got a coach that can take them through the processes of growth, you know, and be able to articulate that and be able to teach it. Everybody can't teach. Everybody can't teach. People want the already developed player, you know, but it takes, I'm looking for that coach, that can teach at a level of where all the different kids are, that can coach that kid, and teach that kid that's pretty polished, to also helping and developing that child that is just getting their feet wet. So at that age, everybody wants to win. So don't misinterpret that, right? But I'm talking about the win at all costs, where this kid is coming every day and you just like, nope, you just sit over there and not even getting the reps in practice. Because if you go to some practices, you'll see those that maybe 7, 8, not even 7, 8, 9, 10 kid hardly getting any reps even in practice. They just stand on the sideline watching the starters. That's something that you want to like really see, like, when are they ever going to get better? And they may not get a lot of time in the game, but you should be able to get your reps in practice.
So I mean, like, for a parent, I don't know, Trey.
Yeah.
Trey has a bad game. How do you respond in a way? You know, he seems like he's down or it's affecting him. You know, how does a parent respond to their child after a loss?
I can speak for my child because Trey's the type of kid that he get really quiet. He's quiet. He's processing it. Let him process it and then ask questions. Be like, what happened? Oh, I had these midterms. Let's go look at it. And then because I wasn't always at all of his games, so a lot of times, like, we watch film together. And I was like, you see this? This is where your turnovers are coming from. Whether it's somebody's out of position or you got overzealous and, anxious about running a play the exact way it should run, even if the person's not looking or whatever. So I talked to him. Just talk to him. What did you see? It's not beating him up, because most kids, most players, they already know the mistakes that they made. It's now you want to be solution oriented. So now it's like, okay, let's find a solution to what's wrong. So that's the approach that I did. But then again, Trey was a pretty good basketball player. Now, Marquise, people don't realize I have 2 sons. Marquise worked for every opportunity he had, right? But with Marquise, he really didn't want to talk about it a lot. You know what I mean? He was one like, I'm going to get in the gym and figure this out, And so, I have 2 different kids that had 2 different opportunities, had 2 different paths, and that's how I handled it.
So, how do you handle? I mean, does it ever be a tough situation as far as like when people are going different paths for your sons? You know, so your son's going one path, the other one's going another path. Is there any ever conflict, I should say?
I think the age difference was good, and that when Trey started coming along, Marquise was transitioning into college, right? And so he wasn't highly recruited. We had to shake some bushes, and talk to some people and lean on some relationships that were out there. And so that was his path. Now, what the thing with Marquise is we were kind of in a rough patch in that because he wasn't highly recruited, he was younger. So we weren't I should say, I wanted to reclass him. That's when I learned about reclassing. When Marquise was like in the 9th grade, I think it was, maybe even the 8th grade, I was like, we gotta, and it was really socially in school, getting in trouble, just 13, 14-year-old stuff. I was like, you keep that up, I'm putting you back in your right grade, right? Mm-hmm. Because he was actually a year younger than his class. And so, nope, I'm gonna do better. Got into high school, and then I was just like, I think even academically, you can utilize that time in your correct grade. That's when Coach McKenzie talked to me. He was like, it's too late. It's too late. You got to do that before 7th grade. So we had to work that out. But, he was always playing against older kids, which he wasn't that far behind, but I think another year would have benefited him in a lot of different ways. But we thought about, okay, should we send him to a prep school? As we entertained a prep school or a JUCO. In the prep school that we looked at, again, I was really on my own with that whole process. And so it's like, okay, well, the prep school really wasn't recruiting him like that. They were, but it wasn't clear enough for me. So I said, hey, Coach, Coach Jason Beer, who used to coach at St. Thomas Academy, was like, hey, I know a coach over here at NDSCS, North Dakota State College of Science. He's like, he looked at Marquise, he really liked his game. So, but Marquise kind of he didn't want to use his eligibility. And I said, look, at this point, they both, could work for you, but I trust this one more because you're getting college credits. You're close to home. The other one was in Virginia. I think Coach McKenzie had an opportunity at, I want to say it was Payne College. But again, it wasn't, there wasn't a lot of clarity for me. So I went with who wanted him, and that's what we did with him, so.
Is that kind of how Trey made his decision?
Now Trey's situation was different because Trey came along, he was playing at a high level in 7th grade, and then our decision to let him play with Howard Pulley at the 16U level as an 8th grader paid dividends. Nope, he wasn't the star, but he held his own. And so at that point, I was just like, why go back and play 8th grade in the summers? You're already on the EYBL circuit. You're playing against the best of the best. He went on to play with, CP3, Chris Paul, Rising Stars. That was for rising 9th graders. Did extremely well there. Was an All-American at that, chosen top 20 at that. USA Basketball saw him there. And so, all that stuff got the ball rolling for exposure, whereas when Marquise was playing, he was playing at he was playing some national tournaments, but it wasn't, obviously if you can play on the circuit, you want to play on the circuit. That's where all eyes. So he would have been a late addition to that. And had an opportunity to play with Howard Pulley and Trey Jones and them. And he was just like, nope, I'm going to stay in my lane here. And I'm going to, stay committed to where he was at that time. So.
Can you tell me like I mean, you can call it a mistake, or just a learning lesson from your two sons. They got the age gap. So what's something that you changed that you recognize with your older son that you changed when it got to your younger son? As far as decisions or whatever.
Great question. Two things. One, so I was the first one to put a ball in their hands. We did fundamentals at Longfellow, bigs, Trey was like 4. Marquise and them was like 9 or 8. So I started them with the fundamentals, got them started at Urban Stars over at Colin Powell, and something goofy happened with the coach that was there, so I coached them. That started me coaching them. I had no intentions on coaching them. I wanted to help them with their fundamentals, but team sport, by the time Marquise hit 9, Trey was like 4 or 5. I said, okay, this is the team that you're gonna play for. So he played with Urban Stars, Biggs, a lot of the other kids that he was playing with from 5th grade to 8th grade. So the coach ended up not completing out the season. I stepped in and then I kept him. I feel like I kept him too long. I kept him too long.
You kept Trey too long?
Marquise too long.
Okay.
And I coached him as a mom. I coached him as a mom. So, you talking back? What?
Yeah.
And then the other kids, I gave them more grace than I gave him. I was hard on them. I was hard on all of them, but I didn't let mom take the back seat when we were on the court. So Coach Lamar, dang, I'm drawing a blank for Lamar's last name right now. Willis.
Yeah.
Okay, so Lamar Willis came and he saw the team and he really liked Biggs at the time. But he was like, hey, let me take him, Biggs and Marquise. And so I started letting them play with the, actually I want to say they were Elamine at that time. And then they changed over to something Stars. I'm drawing a blank. But anyway, he started coaching them when they got in 8th grade. So I let them kind of do both. He traveled out of state, so he was going into the Midwest. He was going to like Arkansas. He was taking them beyond like Iowa and Wisconsin, which is where, actually at that time, Marquise and them wasn't doing any traveling. But he was like, hey, I got a team. We travel out the state. I was like, cool. So I let them do that. And then North came along and they wanted Biggs to play as an 8th grader, but Biggs wanted to stay. He couldn't do both. So when he found out he couldn't do both, he said, I want to finish 8th grade with Urban Stars. And so they finished 8th grade and then they moved on to high school. But I wish I would have let Marquise play for someone like Lamar earlier, and just continue to be mom. So when Trey came along, I was like, okay. Trey had a coach, Coach Robert Grace, took all the little brothers from those. So he took Willie, he took Trey, some other kids, his own son, and he made like a younger version of them with Urban Stars. And that group took off. So Trey was playing like 2 levels up. He was like a 1st grader. They were 3rd graders. And that started him on that trajectory of playing with older kids, aside from, playing with Biggs and them in the park and Marquise and them in the park. So I let him coach them, and I was like, good, I'm mom again. But then they started traveling. I was like, oh, my goodness. But they were good. That was Minnesota Elite. So but then he stepped away. I'm sorry to cut you off. Go on.
Trey was playing, but Trey ended up playing varsity 8th grade though, didn't he?
Yeah, but now this is like 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. This is young, like elementary school. Okay. Robert Grace had them up until they were like 4th graders maybe, and then he started his great concessions that he does. In that business that he had, so he stepped away. Well, Randy Carter Randy Carter's son came and played with that group, and the 2 of us, we tag teamed and coached them, and so we kept that group together all the way up to 8th grade. So Trey, I take that back. I'm sorry, up until about 6th grade, and then at that time. I was like, okay, when am I going to let Trey play his age group? Because he always played either a level or 2 levels up. So those kids were starting to go on to the next phase of school. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna let Trey play his age group, and that's when he played with Tyrone Johnson. Tyrone Johnson, and that was like the Little North team, fifth graders. I don't think they were called NABA at that time, but they was like a North High, not North High, I'm sorry, a North Community travel team. And that was with Rio and Willie, and because Willie was with Minnesota Elite with Trey, and they both came over and they played with Rio and Miko and all of them. And then I ended up taking Trey off of that team right before they went to nationals, and he went with the Spartans. And so that started the journey with the Spartans with Coach Buggy in Rome. And then, like I said, he got to seventh grade, and Renee was like, well, when he's not playing with them, because he was committed to them, went to nationals. He said, we play almost every weekend. If you don't have a game, can he come play with us? He went and played with them on the circuit, and I was like, oh, shoot. And so that started the whole, recruiting process. I mean, they were, don't get me wrong, the Spartans, when they went to nationals, they were seen, it was visible, but it wasn't against, like, night in, night out, those top kids that you see on TV right now.
Yeah. So you and Trey, you Trey Keith, y'all play one-on-one?
Long time ago. I just shoot them. You see what I did? You see my shots? That was a men's ball.
Yeah.
So, if that was a women's ball, I probably would have got through all the racks and probably would have made more. But, that's all I do with them now. When they were growing up, I used to, just put my body on them and show them that I'm stronger than them. But, they both would dunk on my head now.
So you never was able to beat them, really? Like
we
one-on-one?
didn't play like that. Like, we played one-on-one. They'll tell you when we were in Boston, they beat me, and that was weak. That was a crate on a tree.
Yeah. So Keith went to North all 4 years.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. And then Trey only played for North.
Trey only played for North as a 7th and 8th grader. He was at Franklin.
Okay.
So, Franklin is North's feeder school.
Right.
Which allowed him to be able to play.
Why didn't he end up going to North?
So he ended up going to Cretan because I wanted him to be held more accountable in school. In school, like I wanted to separate the buddy, the playful, getting in trouble, because I got calls all the time at Franklin. They're being kids, but I wanted it to be more structure, more accountability in the classroom.
More accountability from who?
From the school.
So you felt like?
From the school. I just felt like things were, and whether this was from the district or from administration inside of North, I wanted it to be more accountability and not an excuse, well, this kid is doing this because, so we can't do that. You know what I mean? I wanted it to be, you're in the classroom when you're supposed to be in the classroom. There's no disruptions.
What do you feel like it wasn't under control? Is what
I felt like things were just a little too lax for my liking. And mind you,
at North,
I worked at North. Marquise's 11th and 12th grade year, So just great teachers, don't get me wrong, but I think that there were times where, like, kids running in and out of classrooms, slamming the door, teachers can't even, really teach the kids that wanted to be there. And I know that we got, there's different abilities, right? There's kids with IEPs and things like that, but there's also an accountability process that needs to happen. And even if you have a no suspension rule, right? I think that parents need to come in and we need to say, hey, this is how things need to be, or we got to do something different. Children that are not meeting the expectations academically, we put a plan in place and you follow that plan, So these are just things that, as I said, like, I wasn't just a coach. I was a education assistant.
How
in
did
the
he?
classrooms. And somebody that's not there every day, you know what I mean? Not just after school in the gym, that's in the building all day, every day from 8:30, 8:15 to 3:15, 3:30. You know, after lunch, what's the atmosphere like? You know, and don't get me wrong, North is a very special place, and I valued my time there, but I just felt like I wasn't making the kind of difference that I wanted to make.
How did he feel about that though?
He wanted to be at North.
He wanted to go to.
100%.
Okay.
100%. Because, I mean, all his football teammates were there. All his basketball teammates were there. So what child would not want that?
So what was that conversation like? How did you?
It was like, this is
did
what
you
we
bully him, or was it
No.
like or did you
No.
convince him?
This is what
as
I
a parent?
said. This is what I said. You're going to a private school. Here are your options. Where you want to go. Where do you want to go? So we visited De La Salle. He didn't even do a shadow there. He definitely didn't want that. We visited Minnehaha Academy. That was my number one choice because of comfort, you know. Jalen, and because I knew the parents that were there.
That wouldn't have been fair.
Huh?
That wouldn't be fair.
But you know what? To his credit, he was like, "Yep, those are my boys, but I want to go do this."
Yeah.
And I
So
think
he would have been on that team with
all
Suggs
of
and
them. Chet, all of them.
okay.
Prince, all of them. But and I said, now you talk about bullying. Nope, I was like, hey, this is where you're gonna go, but guess what? They wear uniforms. I don't wanna hear about, you know, it's not what you're used to. It's not predominantly black. You know what I mean? Like there's gonna be some changes that you're gonna have to make, and there's gonna be some rules that you're gonna have to abide by. But I will say, and Trey's not a straight A student and involved in all these extracurricular activities, but I think he was able to keep his focus on what it needed to be, which was school and sports.
So Michigan State, how did I'm sure did the U recruit him? The University of
They
Minnesota?
were the first offer. Patino gave him an offer in 8th grade.
So why not the U? You went to the U. Well, he got offered by the U.
Again, it was his decision. And I just think Trey was like, I think a part of him did not want to stay home, number one. Like, it would have been great to stay home, but...
How did they recruit him? Did they recruit him hard?
Yeah, they recruited him.
Because they get a lot of criticism about how they recruit hometown kids. So what was y'all experience with that?
I would say Coach Patino did, you know, what some head coaches do. I think, could he have done more? I think so. And I know that as a head coach, I mean, yeah, as a college head coach, as I've been an assistant coach at the University of Minnesota, the head coach, you don't let another head coach come into your state and recruit your top athlete and you're not in the building. You know what I'm saying? Now, Coach Conroy, Ed Conroy, he's at the Citadel now. Phenomenal. But he wasn't the head coach, you know. And so I think they did as much as they could do for him. I would never say that.
Did they come sit on your couch?
Well, we couldn't do that. we didn't have any in-home visits. All of Trey's junior year visits were online, were Zooms. But I will say this.
Even Suggs said that. He was saying that he wanted to go to the U bad, and they just didn't really want him. Like you say, go where you want.
Yeah.
Go where you want
Go
it.
where you want it.
They didn't really seem to, they liked him a lot.
Yeah.
But they didn't really have to have him. He didn't get that feel from him. So.
And I think some of that is personality. Like I don't. Coach Patino was a really nice guy. Don't get me wrong. Seemed like he had some passion about him, but he wasn't one that I'm not gonna follow you around.
Ego? He kind of had an ego. You saying?
I can't speak for what it was. I don't know him like that, but it's like, hey, yep, I called this week, or but like so you asked why Coach Izzo we could do a whole nother show because of it. And I could tell you why I felt like I think Trey made the right choice with him, and that culture that he has. I think in terms of like really going to bat for his guys, the recruiting process, as soon as coaches can call. So we had coaches that, and not Patino, I'm sorry. Coach Izzo was not the first to offer Trey. He didn't offer Trey until like 10th grade, maybe. But when he offered him, it was total lock-in, total lock-in. They didn't send a piece of mail, not a piece. Now, Trey had mail from Kansas, Texas, Texas Tech, Marquette, Baylor. Like, they flooded the mailbox. He called. It was way more personal. Way more personal.
And you felt it.
And it was consistent.
Yeah.
It was consistent. And I can, because I've been a coach. I've been a college coach. I know what that personal is way more than getting 100 letters in the mail. That, by the way, Trey got mail he ain't even open. You know what I mean? But that personal, when it's time for the call, Trey got a call from Coach Izzo at 12:01 midnight when it was time to call. You know what I mean? And there were coaches that offered him 9th grade, 10th grade, never picked up the phone. And then came back around once he got older, and it's just like that consistency means a lot. Trey was also the only point guard that he offered that year in the class of 2022. You know what I mean? So those things, they go a long way, and when it's personal and when the kid feels it. Now, I asked Trey, and I don't want to speak for him because, you might want to have him on, but he talked about, he's like, Mom, everybody else was saying what they want me to do for their program. Coach Izzo asked me, what do I want? What do I want to get out of this experience? You know what I mean? So those kinds of things, it's at the end of the day, I don't care what level you're coaching. It has to be about relationship. Can't just be about putting the ball in the hoop.
What kind of advice can you give to basketball moms that don't have the background you have? You privy to have the background that you have, but I mean, some moms ain't never hooped. Some moms don't. What type of advice can you give them in this whole what school to go to, how to keep their kids accountable, student athlete, all that stuff?
There's a wealth of knowledge out there. You got podcasts, you got, and I'm not saying that you just flood yourself with information on social media and stuff like that, but find somebody that's done it and ask them questions. Don't ask them questions so that you can mirror what they do, but ask them questions to get a better understanding, because your son may not be as talented and as skilled as Trey, but there could be a path for him. So if you're only saying, oh, Trey went to this, Trey played for this team, I got to let my son play, that could be way over their head.
And that's what you see? A lot of people try to mirror?
A lot of times. And I'm not even saying, and I think programs do it and coaches do it. And so they say, hey, come play for my team. Look at all these Division I players we had. And then they get there and they're not Division I. And it's like, no, just say, hey, if you work hard, you do these things, things can work out for you. But you can't say just because I had a draft pick that everybody's gonna be a draft pick. First of all, I'll use Chet for an example. And I don't want to call no schools out or no programs out, but I'll just say this. Chet is 7 foot. Why would I try to model Trey's game after Chet's game?
Right.
You can't do it. You can't do it. There's a whole bunch of 6'2", 180-pound guards out there, right? There's a whole bunch of 6 foot crafty ball handlers. There's a whole bunch of 6'5" shooters. There's not a lot of 7'1" guys that can do what Chet Holmgren does. You know what I mean? So ask questions. And I respect a lot of parents, men and women. Actually, they don't mind picking up a phone. I can show you my inbox. Hey, what did you do with this, this, and this? I just said, let your child be your child. Forget about rankings. They mean nothing, because at the end of the day, they got to see each other. Right? So rankings, yeah, I shouldn't say they mean nothing, because they do get people invites and stuff like that, right? But because you don't have it does not mean that you're any less worthy of a player, you know? And everybody's D1 or bust. Everybody can't go D1, especially not now. Holding out until the last minute, those days should be over.
Holding out on what school you going to, you saying?
Yeah.
You should choose early?
Yeah. I know plenty of kids that waited from either their ego, parent, coach, bad advice. I don't know what it is, but you cannot wait like you used to. That's why you see all these upsets of these Division II school teams beating these Division I teams. Guess why? Because they got Division I caliber kids on their rosters. Or they got older kids that have waited their turn, trusted the process, and are able to compete with these teams that perhaps have had one and dones, or kids gone in the transfer portal, and now they got to start all over. Transfer portal is another entirely, we could do another episode on the transfer portal. Mm. Why are you leaving programs where you're doing good? Or, where you've established, nope, you might not be the number one, number two kid, but you're playing. And you said, nope, I'm going to get in the portal because there's something better out there. It's not necessarily true. And if it is better, guess what? Some coaches aren't going in the portal first. And if they are going in the portal, they're looking for that top-notch kid. You can't be a reserve in the portal unless you are a unicorn. You know what I mean? Something that's is not a dime a dozen. You're a very unique kid. And some kids go in the portal because they've been told to go in the portal. If you just up and say, oh, Malik went in the portal, I'm going to go in the portal, let me try it. Guess where they're at? They're still in the portal. So it's like people that are trying to compare their children to someone else's child is a huge mistake. I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that I think parents make, and a lack of knowledge.
So you're a head coach right now, right?
Yeah, I'm at Cretin-Durham Hall.
Cretin-Durham Hall.
Yeah, okay. That's ever since I left North 5 years ago. This will be my 5th year there. I was at North for 3 years.
Coaching?
Yep.
Head coach?
Head coach.
So why did you leave North?
Again, okay, so I wanted to be in the building that I was coaching. Okay. And so I knew I wasn't coming back to North as a employee, in the building, 9 to 5, and it really hurt to leave, because it was 100% not about the kids. It was 100%. And I felt like I didn't have to be their coach to still impact their lives. And I still was able to do that for that group of kids, for the kids that I had built those relationships with. And so, I'm at Cretin-Durham Hall. It's my 5th year. I've gotten kids from North that I coach in the college, still supporting them, still going to their baby showers and weddings, and, well, not weddings, but you know what I mean? Like, still having that interaction, going out to dinner, going and supporting them in whatever their activities were. So those relationships did not stop because I left.
For sure. All right. Tell me something that most people don't know about Crystal Flint. It's like some interested, some wow us.
I don't know about
embarrassing. Something that's
you want
like,
something like that. Well, I'll just say something. I'll say two things. So I'll give you something embarrassing.
Or interesting. Something that's like, dang,
Interesting.
fun fact.
Fun fact. So one thing about me that I think is I'm passionate about what I do. I'm passionate about the people that I care for. And I think sometimes that's taken as too aggressive, non-approachable. I think if I may toot my own horn, that I think I'm probably one of the most loyal people, that my friends may have. I'm loyal to a fault. But at the same time, if I feel like I'm being taken advantage of, then I can wipe my hands and not think about it again, because I go hard in the paint for people that I care about. You know what I mean? And when I feel like someone's being done wrong. I'm a student advocate. That's my job at Cretan Durham Hall, and I feel like I go hard for people. And when it's taken for granted, or people misinterpret it and then try to flip it like I'm doing something wrong, I'm like, I don't got time for that. I'm moving on to the next. In terms of embarrassing,
or interesting.
Interesting.
Something we just don't know,
Most people don't know that I actually blew my knee out. I actually only played 3 years of college, 2.5 years of college basketball at the U. I blew my knee out my freshman year. I blew up my knee out my sophomore year. And I didn't play any games my freshman year. Sophomore year, played 3 games and still came back from 2 major total reconstructed knee surgeries to go on, be a captain of a team that went to its first NCAA tournament. So I was a part of that team that beat Notre Dame in the NCAA tournament. First time ever at the U. I know that ain't embarrassing, but that's a fact that people don't really know. I think they think, oh, she balled. She played all 4 years, and I played 2.5 years. Embarrassing? I'm scared of dogs. Okay. Embarrassing.
I say it don't have to be embarrassing. Like for me, I hate hot sauce.
Really?
People be like, what?
Well, I just told you something. I'm petrified of dogs. Like, if a dog walked in here right now, I would run. I'm serious. I'm serious. But I don't know. Ask me. I don't know.
No, it's all good.
I don't know.
I just wanted a, fun fact from you, from Crystal. But that's fine.
Most people know I grew up in Roxbury, Massachusetts, Orchard Park. Grew up with New Edition, Bobby Brown.
You grew up in Boston?
Boston.
Okay.
The projects. I come from very humble beginnings. Welfare. You know what I mean? I'll say this, though. My paternal grandmother raised me. My mother had 4 young children. 4 young children. She had 4 children at a young age. 2 of us lived with my father's mother. 2 lived with my mother. My oldest brother was murdered at 15. My grandmother had a 3rd grade education. My mother's hardest worker that I know, actually both of them. And but what my grandmother instilled was to get an education. And then my AAU coach. So I was able to give my children what I had. And that was love in the home, not a whole bunch of money. We're not rich by any stretch of the imagination, but to give them love, to teach them community, to teach them to be understanding, respectful of other people, and then to use basketball as a means to get to where you want to go, as far as you want to go with it. So I was able to do that, and I'm very blessed to have that. Both of my mother and my father are still living, doing as well as they can be for people in their 70s. Love them to death, but I appreciate that my mother had the wherewithal to say, I can't do this all by myself. And my grandmother picked up the pieces. So I'm very old school in that, because that was my upbringing.
Did Ralph blow a call against Trey?
Huh?
Did Ralph blow a call against Trey?
Yes, he did. I watched Ralph's interview. But here's the thing. Officials can get it right. Now, I don't know if he didn't see it, right? Because it wasn't his initial call, okay? Trey got blasted through the padding in the wall, right? As officials, you got to know how somebody went down. And I can't remember who it was from Hopkins. Was it not Amir? Who was the next big guy? Who went to Arizona? Zeke.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Zeke blocked it, but he took Trey's arm off doing it. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't Ralph's call per se, but I feel like as an official, somebody got to come and get that right. And he didn't do that.
Right.
So then they commenced to,
You blew it, Ralph. Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming. Glad we could have this conversation.
I appreciate it. I love what you're doing. What your family does is irreplaceable for the community. And you're taking over, or not taking over, but you're in your lane with doing this. And it's great. Keep up the great work.
Appreciate that. Means a lot.
Keep up the good work.
Means a lot.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Still not embarrassing enough, huh?
No, but we'll take it. We'll take it. You heard it here first on Address It. She's scared of dogs.
Hey, you don't like hot sauce?